Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to spend some time with me on the video and check it out. Always definitely appreciate that. And guys, today we're going to be talking about the common summertime bass fishing mistakes anglers make and how to fix those mistakes. I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions amongst anglers out there about what fish do in the summertime, so we're going to sort of break some of those in today's video and hopefully help you guys catch some good fish. Also, guys, I just wanted to show you two different things you guys might be interested here at Tackle Warehouse. You've heard me talk about it. If you guys are looking for a rod sleeve, guys, check out these new Evolve rod sleeves. These are scuba diving grade neoprene. They don't fade, they're UV protected. They've got this tether that automatically attaches to your handle so the things don't fly off. Definitely the highest quality rod sleeve I have ever seen if you're looking for some. And also check out, before these things are gone at Tackle Warehouse, this new Mega Bass Shading X R55. You guys have heard me talk about this. This thing is freaking unbelievable. I'll link both those things in the description of the video if you guys want to check them out. Much appreciated there. Okay guys, summertime fishing has, it's evolved a lot over the past 40 years. I'll give you a little backstory on this, how it was when I got started. Most people thought for so many years that like in the summertime of the year, the fish just didn't bite that good. It's like if you were gonna fish in the summertime, you had to get out there right off the bat in the morning, and after about an hour of daylight, it was over. And most people just didn't fish in the summertime. They say it was too hot, fish aren't biting. Sort of the same thing with the winter time, but obviously that myth was busted long ago. But still, I wanna give you guys some tips and advice that will help you out as far as catching more fish in the summertime. Now, this is pretty much the same across the country. It's like a lot of the stuff we talk about here on the channel, the geographical location of the lake determines a lot of these techniques and strategies we talk about. But in the summertime, when your water temperatures are at the warmest, this pretty much holds true for whether you're fishing a natural body of lake, man-made, you know, any type of structure, various water clarities, that type of stuff. So the first thing out there, I think one of the first mistakes a lot of anglers make out there is they think that they've got to put all their eggs in the basket about getting out there early for the early morning bite. We talked about this a little bit before. Guys, the quote, early morning bite you guys hear people talk about is the most overrated thing in bass fishing. It's not that great. Normally the fishing's not that great. Yeah, you can catch a few here and there on the top water. But overall, out of all the summers that I've fished, and I fished a lot during the summers over the past 50 years, I attribute, you know, a small percentage of my overall catch to getting out there for that early bite. Most of the time, it's just, you know, it's not worth it. You got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go bass fishing. It's just, you don't really need to do that. So the first thing I want to break out there is don't feel in the summertime of the year that you got to get out there at the crack of dawn to catch a bass, because you don't. Now, if you're fishing something like a farm pond or a certain type of water where there's not a lot of cover or not a lot of options, yeah, your topwater fishing may be okay in the morning, but overall, it's a highly overrated deal. Now, the thing that you got to realize in the summertime, there's a couple different things going on most lakes across the country. First of all, not all lakes, but most lakes develop a thermocline during the summertime. And this thermocline can be at different depths depending upon how the lake's set up and the water clarity and all that type of stuff. But normally what happens is when that thermocline begins to form, which normally is usually sometime in July is when it begins, you start having fish move a lot. You start having fish, they disperse a little bit. Some of the fish begin to suspend. Some of the fish move shallower, you know, to get into better oxygen levels because they lose that oxygen deep. So there's a lot of different fish movement going on. In the month of June, before the thermocline actually forms, you really have more fish that are deep than any other time during the summer. It's like, even though June has, June is a time of the year where your water temperatures are not maxed out, the fact that there's no thermocline and the fact that a lot of those fish move deep after they spawn makes most of the fish in June, you know, a bigger population of them go deep. But in July and August, those same fish that were at deep on the bottom, again, tend to suspend and move shallower and just disperse a little bit. So here's my advice. I want to sort of go through the 3 months of the year, June, July, and August, and sort of give you guys some tips and advice overall that's going to help you. First of all, the month of June, there's a definitive separation of about half the fish in the lake are shallow and half the fish in the lake are deep in the month of June. You got a population of the fish that stay shallow to forage on whatever shallow cover or shallow forage is up there, like your bluegills, your perch, your crawdads, frogs, snakes, all that type of deal. They live shallow, they live in those same type of areas where a lot of the fish have spawned earlier. And then you have a 50% of the population that those fish move deep, and they move deep usually, and they set up on hard structure. Now, what I mean by that is hard structure is something like, say, if you get out off the end of the point, and you've got a definitive part of the point that drops off, or you got a rock pile out on that point, or you got a brush pile, that is hard structure. And in June, bass are notorious for getting on that hard structure and setting on the bottom in schools. This is when they school up in pretty large schools in the month of June. And this is a really good time of year to catch them deep cranking, a football head jig, and a big worm if you decide to fish deep. And usually, again, that lasts up until about June. Some of the best deep fishing I've ever had in my life has come deep cranking in June. Deep cranking is my favorite technique to use in the month of June. It catches lots of fish and it catches big fish. I mean, it catches lots of 4-pound fish. Now, the transition with that is once that water temperature begins to max out and you start to have your nights are warmer and warmer and warmer, your water temperatures are not cooling off, everything is getting warmer, and the thermocline begins to stratify a little bit out there. Those shallow fish are going to stay a little bit, but you're not going to have quite as many of them. In June, if you have 50% of the bass that are living shallow in June, by the time July or August rolls around, you got about 25% of them living shallow. And if you have 50% of those fish in June that are out living in deep water on the bottom, by the time that July rolls around, you got 75% of those fish in the lake. You got maybe 25% of them are out there roaming, suspended, chasing shad out in the middle of the lake. You got the other part that are still relating to hard structure, but they're shallower. In June, they may have been 20, 25 foot, and in July, August, they may be up 5 to 10 foot deep, depending upon the water clarity. And then you'll have fish that just generally disperse throughout the lake and maybe set up on isolated targets. They may move to boat docks. They may move to a bridge pier. They may move to, a lay down tree, anything like that. But you've got a lot of movement within the fish themselves. So in the month of July, July and August are some of the most challenging months that you're going to have. Usually the way that I approach July is depending upon the type of lake I'm fishing. If I'm fishing a clear water lake in the month of July, I really look for those suspended fish, and I do a lot of drop shotting in the month of July, vertical. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll fish bridge piers vertical, I'll fish commercial docks vertical, I'll get out on some of those points, especially if there's timber on it, and fish a drop shot vertical. That's one of the things I look for. But if the lake that I have, even if it's a clear water lake, and even if you got some slightly stained water in some of those areas of the clear water lake, the next thing that I do is I always gravitate towards that colored water. So say, for example, in Table Rock Lake here, in July, you may have 10 foot of water clarity down on the lower end of the lake, but you may go up one of the river arms, like up Kings River, and you may get into 12 or 15 inches of visibility. And that's another thing I look for. In the month of July, I like to target shallow water, flipping and pitching, soft plastics, throwing a square bill crankbait on whatever shallow targets available up there, rockwood, anything like that. Now, when August rolls around, fishing gets tougher. It's like the oxygen levels start to drop a little bit. Lake levels normally start to drop. The water temperatures are usually maxed out at their hottest. And what you're going to find out overall is the month of August, in my opinion, is probably about the toughest month of the year to fish. The fish are hard to catch, based again upon where you're at. If you guys are fishing up north, like at Lake St. Clair for a smallmouth lake, it's awesome. It doesn't apply up there. But if you're fishing anything south of the northern tier lakes out there, it's going to be tough in August. Now, a couple different things open up in August. Once August rolls around, in my opinion, this is what happens. You begin to start losing some of those suspended fish. Those suspended fish are still going to be out there, but they're not going to be out there in the numbers that they were. In August and September, especially early September, a lot of those fish that were out deep on the bottom and suspended, those fish again are scattering even more. If they're in any wolf packs during like the month of June and July, say they're swimming out in 2 or 3 wolf packs, a lot of those fish, become solitary and they disperse and they start setting up on just random pieces of cover. And that's why you might, if you go out in August, you might catch one on a popper right off the bat on a riprap bank. You might catch one, fishing a little swim bait suspended out off the end of the point. You might catch one on a big worm casting on a point with a brush pile out there. You might catch one flipping a boat dock. You might catch one on a little crankbait fishing, a shallow, dirty bank up the river. You might catch one flipping a lay down tree. It's wide open about different things you can do. So here's what I start doing in the month of August. When the month of August rolls around, I target shallow fish exclusively. I have found, and if you look back at like all the past Bassmaster Classics, most Bassmaster Classics, when they were held in the month of August, were one shallow. They're not one deep. Some of them were, but most of them were one shallow because you got better oxygen shallow. So normally what I do in August is I start out with a walking topwater, like a Zerespook or Megabass Diamante or something like that, and I fish that walking topwater right off the bat in the morning, most all day long, or a whopper plopper, or maybe a horny toad, some type of a topwater, because I'm targeting those fish that are really hardcore after those spawning bluegills. To me, those fish are more reliable. I'd rather take a topwater bait and go fish shade pockets in the back of coves and all that type of stuff all day long, rather than get out on those points and deep crank or fish a worm or football head jig. I've just had better success doing that. So topwater is a really good bait all day long in the month of August, especially if you're fishing those flatter banks where you think those bluegills are spawning. It's a really good technique to do it. Also, a little prop bait can be really good. The other thing I do in August is I start downsizing my lure size. Earlier in the year, if I'm fishing a big crankbait or a square bill or something like that, I'm usually using 2 or 3 inch size. But in the month of August, I go down to my real small crankbaits, like that little Megabass Z2 crankbait, a crankbait that is like 1.5 inches long. And again, I move to the off-colored water. I look for the dirtiest water in the lake, go to that little bitty crankbait, and I catch a lot of fish on a small crankbait in the month of August. And also, if I'm pitching and flipping, say if I have docks or shallow cover, lily pads, anything like that, I'd even downsize my flipping baits. I'll go to like a little 4-inch, Zoom finesse worm, something really small, a little tube. You're gonna find out that in the month of August that almost every lure that you fish, or you're gonna do a lot better on it if it's a small lure, with the exception of a topwater. They still will bite a pretty large topwater during the month of August. So anyway, guys, that's just sort of an overview, some things that work for me in August. That's sort of how I approach it. Obviously, that's from a traditional standpoint. If you're, a spotlighter, you're gonna get out there with your forward-facing minnow and roam around in the middle of nowhere, so this is not applicable to you. But anyway, if you're just fishing traditionally, those techniques that I just told you, I think it's gonna add up to some good fish for you guys. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.